And the goal is to bring you your next favorite band.
Thanks for having us. This is a very cool show.
Yeah, so through many iterations, and we finally landed on the weirdest one by far.
Just a couple of feelings, and boom, you got a sound.
I remember this one time. I had been writing some songs, and I went out. I'm just going right in on this story. I went out, and so I was.
The story's longer than the song itself. We'll go ahead and play it.
And listen, it's going to be everybody's favorite band. Welcome to your next favorite band. That's both the show title and our promise to you. We here at Stereophilia Studio are tireless in our pursuit of finding incredible, genre-defiant artists who are either a hot up-and-coming band or a group that has been delivering for years but have flown under the radar. Tonight, the hosts of Rock Docs podcasts, David Lizerbram and Andrew Keatts. Each month, we will bring you live streams, audio podcasts, and perhaps even a live concert where you can listen to the stories and hear the music of artists personally curated by us based on what we feel will be worthy of your time. Be sure to subscribe and tune in to each episode because the possibilities are endless and you never know who will be your next favorite band. Hello, everybody. I am your host, Philip Reese.
Hello, and I am David Moore, your co-host.
And this is...
your next favorite band.
He hesitates because sometimes it's not.
Well, it may not be a band.
Spoiler alert.
Also.
But yet still...
music. I mean, yeah, totally music.
Still could be finding your next favorite band. It's just like 2 degrees separated.
Or maybe it's a new way to find it, your next favorite band.
I love it. Love it. Anyway, had something, there was a music element to it, but it was just something super hilarious that I saw today that I just kind of wanted to share because, I don't know, let's do something different today, David. What do you think?
Sure.
Okay, so I don't know why I find stuff like this really funny, but yet here we go. I don't know if the sound's going to come through, which would be really sad if it doesn't, but this was on Instagram today. Is that showing up on your side, David?
Yeah, so I see a squirrel hanging what looks upside down on a bird feeder at this point in time.
And so here is this amazing video of this from planetanimal.id. And can you hear the audio?
Yeah, I got the Curious Fire music.
Yep. And so this thing is just incredible. I wish I could see this. And you just see this thing swinging around, and he almost grabs this pole like this. And again, why do I find this funny? I don't know. I'm just glad it has a Chariots of Fire music because that allowed me to feel comfortable putting it on the show. When I was watching this,
that music is coming through pretty darn loud. It was launched off that thing.
There's this awesome part, Tim, just when it's happening in the beginning. The cardinal just goes, I am out of here.
Is there any way you can turn down the volume on that thing?
I just turn it off. It's a 30-second thing.
It's
anyway,
quite loud.
On my side, it was coming through the speakers of the laptop, so it wasn't quite as loud. But
then my side was coming into my ears.
Oh, well, my apologies there.
Yeah,
but
it's okay. I mean, we all need a little Vangelis in our life. So,
we do. Everyone could use some Vangelis. And again, please, we'll link to that. Because
I'm probably saying that wrong.
Perhaps. But we're not going to say our guest's name wrong.
I'm going to try not to.
So tonight we have a music adjacent, as we like to refer to it, a podcast that I was starting to listen to that I really enjoy, and also just they're a great follow on Twitter in particular because it's got some snark factor to it, which I love. But I'll bring up their site. They recently had some great news. I can't wait to ask them about this. There's a page now on Treblezine, and we'll be able to bring this up here while you share some bio, because they recently got added to Treble Media.
Yeah, that's very recent. So here we go. Created in 2021 by David Lizerbram and Andrew Keatts, Rock Docs, Dissects, Music documentaries from the perspective of music fans, even if the hosts are not always specifically fans of the artists covered in each film. Each episode is dedicated to one movie. Sometimes they cover a band they know really well, and sometimes they are learning about them by watching the Rock Doc and discussing. Rock Docs can be streamed on Apple Music, Spotify, or your favorite podcasting service or app.
Outstanding. And welcome to the show, David Lizerbram, Andrew Keatts. Or is it Andy? I see now in the bottom there it's Andy.
We like to play it both ways, but thanks for having us, guys.
Thank you for joining. And thank you, David, as well.
Yeah, happy to be here.
And let's start with that. Great news. I mean, it looks like that article was posted on the 14th of this month of March 2023. Sounds like you guys got added to a nice little organization called Treble.
Yeah, so Treble Media is a independent music site. They've been around for 20 years, a long time. And it's treblezine.com. They publish reviews, everything from record reviews to interviews with artists, news, and a lot of articles that are kind of look backs on things like the essential whatever guide to a particular artist or genre and things like that. Really interesting stuff, and it really covers a ton of genres from metal to hard rock to jazz, a lot of jazz coverage, like contemporary jazz, and really interesting stuff. And they and it was started by friends of ours who used to live in San Diego where we live, Jeff Terich and Candace Renee, and they so they've been on our podcast, we've been on their podcast, and vice versa, whatever. And so they eventually recently reached out to us and said, would you like to join our media empire? And we were flattered that anybody cared enough to ask, and a bidding war ensued.
That's right. Yeah. Then there was an intense negotiation.
Yeah, exactly. But after fighting off many other bidders, no, we love their site. We've been, fans of what they do and just them as people, as awesome people, for a long time. So it was like, hey, we get to do a fun thing that we're already doing, but with some other friends as well, and promote them. They can promote us, blah, 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 blah. And so far, so good.
Well, it sounds like from the nature of what you're describing, the site, I mean, you guys sound like a perfect fit for the kind of thing, but aren't duplicating anything they were already doing. So that just is an enhancement and an extension of what they were already doing.
Yeah, that's right. There's definitely no duplication, which I think is good for them.
Right.
The one thing I asked them that they were sure of was Treble. I've always really admired the site because where a lot of music publications, I think, are very similar, or just in the internet in general has a lot of duplication all over the place. They really stand out and have a personality and their own perspective on the music, the world of music. And I wanted to make sure that they were okay with us bringing our own little weird thing to their site and not fouling up an identity that they'd built for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
And they said basically that's exactly what they wanted to do was to sort of talk to new people and get into some areas that they weren't already into. So in that respect, it's worked out really well. And people take David and I as we are. We're a sort of a strange little show, but people like it. Okay.
So why don't we take it back to the beginning there? Like, how did it start? I mean, what kind of inspired you to kind of do the first one and then take it as seriously enough to actually put it out there on the platforms?
Pretty simple. Andy and I, we've been friends for a long time. We live near each other. Our kids are about the same age. We were like a pod during the 2020. That was like the cool thing to be, a pod.
Right.
And
that's why we wear the same button down shirts.
So you can find each other if you need to.
Yeah.
When the panic starts setting in, you just look for the person with that shirt.
Exactly.
Yeah, like when you go to Disneyland, you just all wear the same shirts and then you can find each other.
Exactly.
Why you dress your kids in fluorescent yellow shirts,
So anyway, so we were like hanging out with like our two families were hanging out all the time, and Andy and I just like every conversation would eventually turn to music documentaries because we're both obsessed with music documentaries. And our wives were like, we're hearing about the history of the Eagles again.
and, and how they all hate each other.
Yeah, exactly. And so they're like, you guys don't even like the Eagles. We're like, no, but the movie is so great. So anyway, but we'd both done podcasts in the past. Andy is a journalist and he's done a bunch of media stuff. I've done a few other little projects and so forth.
Yours are in the legal world, right?
Some, and then just some, a whole variety. And I mean, I also I've done a lot of music stuff, etc.
Nice.
So it was just kind of a good fit. And so we were just kicking around the idea, and I don't know, we just started doing it, and people enjoy it and listen and whatever seem to like it for the most part.
The secret at the beginning was our incredibly low expectations. That we were willing to keep doing it,
right?
Even in the absence
it's
of listeners.
undercommit and overdeliver. David and I are similar. We just were wanting to talk to musicians. So we have this awesome festival here in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. It's 10 days, 400 bands across those days. It's 12 free stages of music. And just started to go up to people afterwards saying, hey, would you come on our show to be interviewed? And they would say yes. And every time someone would say yes, we're like, I don't know why they're saying yes.
Yes.
It's truly shocking sometimes.
Obviously that legitimizes things.
Lock them in. Right, exactly. And then now it's been roughly 18 months or 20, I think. And there was about, maybe 17 episodes where it was like a co-hosting of a different podcast that already existed, and then we branched out on our own. It was a year ago, so now there's 50 some episodes, just about 50 I should say, on this. And like you said, it just was something where it was just set the bar low, just wanted to have some fun, and then now here we are. There are people out there who listen, and it's cool.
Yeah. We didn't start asking many. We didn't have many guests for a while at all, and then when we did start having guests initially, it was almost always other podcast hosts or music journalists.
Sure.
And
Makes
only in the
total
last, I don't know, maybe 6 or 8 months, we've started inviting musicians on. And yes, to our immense surprise, they've said yes as well. and that's exciting to us too. It's been cool to talk to them, and they are always very insightful about the world of music or movies.
Yeah, it is. And they tend to have great stories. They're always awesome people. It's a great crew of people to be talking to. So, but yeah, do you have either music backgrounds or anything like that, or was it just music appreciation? Because I don't play an instrument. David was a musician, and I should say still is, but was in bands and such. Whereas I don't
anymore. Time has taken its toll.
Well, sure. I more mean I tried learning a guitar. I can't do it, but it only makes me appreciate it that much more.
Yeah, so we are arranged on the screen appropriately because I too am not a musician, but David is. He's very humble about it. But David's a very good musician and has been in some successful San Diego bands.
Awesome. I'm just glad that anyone named David here is a musician. It's the square rectangle rule, right? If you name it.
right.
But yeah, so David, tell us more about the music you've done.
Oh, I mean, I used to play in bands a long time ago.
And
and
take credit for it.
It was fun. But yeah, I mean, honestly, it's more coming at it from the perspective of a fan, a movie fan, and a music fan. And I mean, Andy and I both go to a lot of shows. I mean, Andy goes to a lot of how many concerts did you go to last year, Andy?
I went to 62 concerts last year.
Awesome.
which is
that's
more
than one a week.
A lot.
Yeah. We try not to count Music Fest because we'll literally see.
Yeah, we'll probably
50 in a
40
week.
or 50 bands in a week.
But that's unfair because it's
a
free and it's right down the block. We walk there.
Yeah, I count those by the day.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I went to Austin City Limits. That's 3.
There you go.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wouldn't come close to.
I'm probably somewhere in the 35 to 40 would be right where I'm at, somewhere in that ballpark.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wouldn't have known.
It's not a competition, but Andy wins.
Yeah. But if it was,
yeah, right.
But yeah. So how I found you is, I'm a huge fan of Brian Jonestown Massacre, and so I was already kind of into them. That movie only made me like them even more. And so then that episode that you had where you had the director and the producer on, I forget either how I found it or, again, someone may have reviewed your episode on Twitter or something. Somebody was, I was like, wow, that's really cool. So that was the first one I listened to. I loved the banter, both, between the two of you as well as with the guests. So I kind of went back down to the beginning and started listening to a bunch, including obviously the first Dig episode, which was just about the movie. And then the second one, the first one I listened to was the one that they were on. But that must have been such a really cool opportunity to bring them on.
Well, that was absolutely one of the examples we were talking about earlier, where you ask somebody to do something and it's amazing when they say yes. And and Andi Timoner, she hasn't actually talked about the movie all that much, considering
I know. Yeah, that's why it was
a legendary piece of media it is.
It is.
And and then we were thrilled to get she gave us so many interesting behind the scenes stories about how the movie came together. And I was just like, man, I feel like we've really built up the public's understanding of how this movie came about at this point.
You really did. I mean, it was like you said, not only is it a great piece of art, the movie, and then your episode is this like behind the scenes documentary of the documentary. It's like Inception. But yeah, no, I thought it was
where we talk about the podcast that's documentary and the music documentaries, which is talking about the music. See, so many layers.
Right. Yeah. Yes, there'll be a movie about us one day.
Yeah, I will say that the way you've come through is sort of something we had in mind about how the show might work if it was going to work, because if you focus on one band per episode, somebody might not like everything, but if you're I do presume that a lot of people, if they go, oh, there's a podcast about music documentaries, if they scroll through the 50 episodes we've done, I imagine they'll like at least one of those bands. Right. There's going to be something in there that sort of has a long tail that way.
Yes. Yeah. It was similar for us. We bring on one band per episode. Same thing. It's like our close, you'll hear it later, where we say, you're probably tuning in because you liked this. And now we just invite you to maybe check out either what we've had in the past or subscribe for the future kind of thing. Yeah. David, anything else you would want to share about the Dig episodes?
No, I mean, those were super fun. Andi and David, her brother, who is, kind of the production partner, they were really generous with their time. And it was like sort of one of these things where like Andy said, we sort of felt proud to contribute a little bit to the appreciation and understanding of the movie, because it's such a seminal movie. Like anytime anybody brings up music documentaries, that one is, naturally comes up as, one of the top ones. And then for people that aren't in this world, that's one of the documentaries where like, it requires a lot of explanation, right? Because if I said, oh, the history of the Eagles, okay, right? Everybody knows the Eagles, right? And it's about the history of them. Now, why we like that movie is a different story. You may or may not like the band, whatever. Whereas something like Dig is so interesting because it's about two bands that like the vast majority of people have never heard of. And, even the movie itself, I mean, it's not as famous necessarily as some, as some other documentaries that are like, because Get Back, everybody knows that exists, right? It's on the Disney Channel, and it's with Peter Jackson and the Beatles. Like everybody,
the power of Disney promoting the Beatles,
right? Like the Beatles, Disney, and Peter Jackson are like the three biggest brands of all time, coming together, synergy. So, this was like a little bit more
promoted by MasterCard,
right? This is more of a quirky oddball pick, but it's just become beloved over the time, and yeah, so that's kind of fun. Is just the fact that like that's such a perfect example of like a documentary. The documentary stands on its own. If you're already one of the relatively small people who's a huge fan of one of these two bands, the Dandy Warhols, the Brian Jonestown Massacre, the movie means one thing to you, but for most people who haven't heard of those bands, the movie stands on its own as a compelling piece of art and documentary filmmaking, and entertaining and funny and weird and tragic in a way.
Sure, totally.
And it goes to show the value of the form. It's not just sponsored content for a pop star to, drop in between albums to have some, to whatever, get their social media hits up or whatever people do now. And we talk about some of the movies that we talk about are definitely sponsored content, and that could be good too. But it really is an interesting, diverse genre, and like totally. I feel like I'm now like pontificating like film school style, but
pontificate away. That's what this is about.
He's also very humble. David is a USC film school grad, so he
right.
He won't talk about any of his qualifications that actually make us.
I was actually going to
viable
ask
as
if you
show.
had if either of you had a background in any sort of film thing. So that at least
The answer to is anybody on the show qualified to do what we're doing? The answer is David is, yes. And then also I'm around.
Andy is an award-winning journalist who does actual research, So it's a little bit of it goes both ways. But no, I was saying like I just kind of found it interesting that like music documentaries are a popular genre. If they're not like Marvel movies or something, but like if you go by the fact that they're making so many of them, like people are out there watching these movies, right?
Oh, totally.
Like whether it's like they're watching it in shame or just whatever. They keep making them, so obviously they're hate watching, whatever. There's an audience for it. It's a genre that like is well established. It has its own tropes, it has its own style, it has its own outliers and successes and failures, and there really just was not a lot of discussion about it. Whereas like you can find podcasts or YouTube channels or whatever about like any other genre you could think of discussing it ad nauseum. And so I do think maybe if we're doing anything, it's like shedding a little bit of light on a genre that's maybe under theorized, under discussed, under appreciated. And I don't know. So we're trying to do that too.
The streaming
making
world,
dumb jokes.
Yeah. The era of streaming also seems to have really supercharged the creation of music documentaries. I think because they're relatively cheap, probably.
Sure. And consumption, because like before I may not have rented from Blockbuster Video a music documentary I wasn't so sure I was going to like, but now you can throw it on and in 15 minutes decide whether or not you want to keep watching, and a lot of times you do. Like that's the other part too, is like they're typically rather entertaining as far as like an engaging story to be told.
And even a bad music documentary has the benefit of music. So like you can if you want to scroll your phone, I think they probably work well for that for a lot of people. Yep.
Yeah, and Dig, I guess another reason why I wanted to listen to the one about with the director was, Anton had famously kind of has said he thought he was not necessarily painted in the best light, but he also kind of tries to play it off like he doesn't care. So then I'm like, I think you'd care more if it was not quite in the right light. But anyway, I wanted to hear that other side of it all, which I just thought was an interesting listen as well.
Yeah, and she was pretty interesting about that. Basically,
yeah, exactly.
That seems to. I mean, more or less, her response was, "That's just Anton being Anton."
Right.
That, like, that he would never want to not have the attention. He loves that too.
Yes. So. Yeah, and I for people who don't know, they were famous for starting barroom fights within themselves. There's amazing footage of that, and just he's a brilliant genius songwriter, but also seems to be a little bit more difficult to get along with. The reason why I'm kind of sharing some of that, in addition to it being, I also just find his music awesome. That's definitely my kind of genre, but not for everyone. But the movie certainly would be, because it's super interesting. But I got to see him on his last tour here in the U.S. I saw him about a year ago. I think it was March of 22, and it was at Union Transfer, which is a very cool venue here in Philadelphia. And it's not seated, so I could kind of wiggle my way up to the front, and I started shooting some video. And there was a bunch of new people in the band. Some, like the tambourine guy, is still there, and a couple other people there. So you could just see them kind of chatting with each other, and he starts playing this riff, and this other one of the other guys goes, "No, that's not how it goes." And you just see them he backs away from the mic, and he just kind of goes, "No, it's like this." And I'm like, "Oh, here we go." I was like, "Oh, goody," because it was the first show on the tour. So I was like, "Here we go." and all of a sudden he goes, "All right, we'll just do it his way." And I'm like, "Oh." I was like, wow, Anton, definitely going through some therapy. I'm very proud of him. But yeah, he totally went along and obviously played it the way the other guy wanted it to be played. And off they went, and the song ripped. So it couldn't have been all that bad.
Right. Yeah. David, did you end up going to the BJM show when they came through here on that same tour?
Yeah, I did. So this was like about a year ago, and I'd never seen them before. And it was like I felt like I got the full Anton experience, where he was just like yelling at people and making comments that were, let's say, off color about everything and everybody. And the music was good, but about maybe 45 minutes of that was, I felt like I had got my money's worth. And you know what I mean? And I was like, all right, let's wrap it up. I think so I didn't hang in there, but I mean, I love their music. they've got a million albums, and I'm far from a completist or anything like that.
Sure.
Of the stuff that I love, that I know, they're pretty consistent. I listened to the most recent album that just came out a few weeks ago, and it was pretty good. I was like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, they're, he's still kind of consistently putting out. If you like this kind of 60s influenced psych rock style, like
Totally.
he's got that nailed.
Yeah, shoegaze before it was called that is definitely what it is, and he was a little off color with us, but definitely, again, since it was early, I guess maybe he was still kind of calm and not. But the only thing was hilarious was they had been gone 2 hours, and he's like ripping, like obviously he had an order of the music he wanted to play, and he was like, "Oh, I guess I'm not going to be able to play these songs," and he rips through like 10 pages. I was like, "How did you think you were going to play that much music? We're already 2 hours in." Anyway, so then he kind of played a closer, and it was over. But super interesting. Anyway, that's Dig. That's like I said, the like you guys said, it's one of those kind of like seminal rock docs that may be even a gateway one for other people to check out. For people to check out other ones, but looks like the first one you guys talked about was Rolling Thunder Review, Bob Dylan's story by Martin Scorsese, which has its own super interesting stories as well.
Yes, yeah. Well, so that one, David and I are both big Bob Dylan heads, so it was a natural starting point. The movie was fairly new at the time. Also, it's just such a bizarre movie because I mean, it's it's, for anybody who doesn't know, it's Bob Dylan at his like classic rockiest, right in the right before what, Desire? Is it right before or right after Desire?
It's right before Desire, so it's some of the music is in it, but yeah, it's like 75. That's
75,
early
Yeah.
75.
Mid 70s is
Yeah.
where you're targeting there.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's this all-star, he puts an all-star tour together. Joni Mitchell joins up, and Joan Baez is on tour, and Roger McGuinn, and then with all of this natural stuff going for it, and having the ability to the original footage right there of Bob Dylan surrounded by legends doing one of his best tours, him and Scorsese decide to like introduce all these fictional elements that are absolutely not commented on as being fictional.
It's so bizarre.
It just goes through, and like the only discussion of it is just a hat tip, and just say, well, artistic license. What are you going to do? Tell Martin Scorsese and Bob Dylan not to do that? So we had to talk about that one.
Who got the short straw to go tell them they have to go recut it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Take out all the false stuff.
So there's a whole thing about like Sharon Stone being a 15-year-old being invited backstage and then coming on tour and being told that that Bob Dylan wrote a song about her, and it's just from a human's imagination. It just didn't happen. None of that happened.
And it's one thing if the entire thing is fictional, like those
right.
fake documentaries, but to weave reality and fiction is like you're just messing with people because you can.
Right. I've talked to so many people who are like, "Oh, I love that movie," and I say, "Did you know that there's like 8% that's not real?" And they're like, "What are you talking about?"
I know.
Like,
there's no like
how would you
asterisks occasionally showing up on the screen, like, by the way, not actually happened.
Right.
It's so Bob Dylan, though.
It is.
Like,
So,
he's just not gonna play it straight. And if you just want a movie, like, people are mad about it. And it's like, if you want a movie that plays it straight, like, go watch any other documentary.
Right? Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
that already exists. Like, it seems like such a weird thing to be upset. Like, look, if you don't like the movie, fine. But to be upset that a movie like that, plays with the narrative is like, there's a million documentaries that are not going to do that.
Right.
You know what I mean? And like, you can read the real story on the Wikipedia page. Like, it's all out there.
Right.
So this is not changing history. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a movie, man. Like, enjoy it or don't, but whatever.
Right. Yeah, it's meant to entertain.
And the music in that movie is the greatest music of all time. Like, it's unbelievably incredible.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can't get into that part of it, that's, everybody's got their own taste, but man, it rocks. So good. Yeah. It's all been downhill from there, I think. That was our first episode, and the subsequent 55 episodes have just been chasing that dragon.
Yeah.
I disagree.
Specific call out when they get to that one town in, I believe, Plymouth, Massachusetts, they realize they've been double booked at the senior center where it's bingo night also. and so Bob just gets the synth out and just plays like a stripped down version of the concert to the bingo night.
So good.
It's
That's
just
awesome.
it's perfect.
It is.
It sounds terrible. I mean, it sounds like the sound in the room is just
Mhm.
miserable, which makes it sound even better.
That is, yeah, that's terrific.
Yeah.
And if you guys were both Bob Dylan heads, I believe one of my favorite things to listen to is how you don't agree on Fish.
Yes.
And this is one of my favorite parts. And David, big Fish fan.
Yeah, I'm a Fish fan.
Oh, all right.
No, our David, this side of David. So here, I'll switch them now. There
There we go.
Now we're assembled by Fish fandom.
By Fish head.
Yes.
I don't have a horse in the race. Like I don't have one way or the other with them. It's
I'm
just
just
never been.
past 30 years since my first show. So February of '93 was my first show.
Ooh, man, that's OG 1.0 era.
Yeah. There was
where?
I went to college, University of Delaware, so they played University of Delaware. They only ever played 2 shows in Delaware, and I was at both of them.
Awesome. That's great. I grew up in outside of Baltimore, Maryland, so I went to a lot of Meriwether Post Pavilion shows.
Yep.
First show was there in 2000, and caught them just before the end.
I think 2000 was the last show I've seen.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So I imagine that would mean that you have strong takes on where they are as a band these days.
No, it was less about being like, oh, I can't believe the changes in the phase 2 and phase 3 and the fandom and all that kind of stuff. It was more about the other parts of my life happened.
Yeah.
And going to a Fish concert now involves a lot more effort than it used to. Though my brother has seen, I think he just cracked 100 shows. And so if I wanted to go with somebody, I obviously have somebody that would be happy to have me tag along. So I'd be happy to go see another show if somebody offered me the opportunity, but the tickets are few and far between.
Yeah. Well, I think they're going, what is it? Star Lake outside of Pittsburgh maybe this summer they're going.
Yeah. And they're playing 5 shows at Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
That's so Trey
and
can
the
walk
Man.
home.
I think they do 2 at the Man here in Philly.
Yeah. They're doing 2 at the Man in Philly.
Yeah. Which is a great venue to see something like
just
that.
like Meriwether Post Pavilion.
I'm actually going in 3 weeks. They're doing 3 nights at the Hollywood Bowl out here.
Awesome.
So I'm gonna do all 3 nights. So.
Yeah, I was just wanting to ask, are you going to go see all 3? Because that seems to be the most important thing to do, is so you can compare all of them.
But yeah, I got to see. I mean, they're going to play different shows every night. You got to go see what you're going to get.
Right.
Trampolines at one show, or are you going to get? They're going to do something. I don't know. You get an awesome tweezer. Like, what are you going to get?
Yeah, I was just telling somebody this weekend. Somebody was asking me what I'm chasing, and despite all those shows I've been to, I have never seen them play "Punch You in the Eye." Which
Peyote.
Yeah,
I have seen that.
Yeah, so there you go. So the good people at fish.net who gather my statistics from all my shows have calculated that there's less than a 4% chance that with the amount of shows I've been to, I would not have encountered a punch you in the eye.
It's amazing that there's mathematics around this.
The data that surrounds Fish is bananas.
That's awesome.
Now that we've taken this completely off the rails.
Well, David, are you into Goose?
Yeah, are you into Goose?
I do like Goose too. So
let's go.
Goose are playing this summer. They're one of the headliners at the Eat a Peach Festival, which is only just like an hour and 20, would you say, Phil, from where we are?
Yeah, that's about right.
In like Scranton?
Right? Yes, exactly.
Yeah, Wilkesboro, Scranton area. Yeah, so they're one of the headliners there, and Quinn Sullivan, the guy that we've spoken to, is going to be playing there as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be fun.
Along with Tedeschi Trucks Band and Les Claypool. I forget the name of that thing that he does.
This Flying Fish Brigade.
Flying
Frog.
Yeah,
Flying Frog. Yeah, I said fish.
Yeah.
Sorry, you can see where our conversation
fish on the brain
was, right? Yeah.
That's a cool festival up this way.
Yeah, I would say Peach Fest is in some ways responsible for launching Goose from the mid-tier of jam bands into where they are now. Their 2019 performance at that festival was
legendary.
It was a great one, and the YouTube link for that traveled far and wide and converted many people, including myself. I would say I think that was my first real exposure to them.
Cool. Well, if you want to come out and join us, it's the last week of June. So
yeah. If you guys are there, I would definitely be there for you guys. Yeah. They're coming out here too. They're coming out in San Diego. I think David was supposed to be there for it, but what do you have, a bar mitzvah?
Something like that. Was that an anti-Semitic comment? I'm not really.
Oh, whoa.
show just totally took that took
wedding?
a hard
You could-
left
it
turn
could've
that
been
we
a
weren't
wedding.
waiting for there. We're just gonna
No,
have to argue over cats and dog people, but no, this is going totally different.
I'm gonna be out of town.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, I won't be able to go. But I did go see them last year here in San Diego with Andy and a bunch of people, and it was a great show. So I'm a fan, and yeah, shout out to Goose. If you're listening,
think-
Goose.
I
You're
think
good.
that is
Fish
the
bad,
thing
Goose
that is so
Goose
interesting about our complete disagreement on Fish is that
He's a
David
fan.
loves the Grateful Dead. David loves the Grateful
Yeah.
Dead
They're awesome.
as much or more
Great.
than I do.
Sure.
And he listened to like 5 notes of Goose and he was like, "Oh, these guys are good." And yet there's Fish does not fit into that at all.
Doesn't
And
scratch
not in
his
the
brain
slightest
the
way.
right
That is
way.
interesting because usually would be they're all from the same pie at that point in time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
No, I saw them twice live. Both shows were bad.
Wow.
I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, he's
not
tried.
a fan.
I'll give him that. He has
You
tried.
went
No
back
one
for
can
a second show, so in your defense, you did go back.
Yeah, maybe,
Yeah,
maybe it's an
really,
off night.
I really gave it a try. I mean,
I made
How
him watch a
fast into
whole-
the second night were you
Yeah.
like, yep, still sucks? How long did it take?
I mean, not at all. No, I mean, this was in the '90s, and it was easier to go. It was like, hey, I was living in LA. It's like, hey, I'm going to see Fish tonight at the Forum. I've got an extra. You want to go? Like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, and I was like, whatever, in college and had nothing else. You know what I mean?
Right.
When I
And
went
no
to
other
my first
demands
show,
of my
my
time.
roommate was like, "I've got an extra ticket. Do you want to go see this band called Fish?" I'm like, "Sure."
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And then-
exactly.
I had a great first show, and I was like, "This is something I want more of."
And that's the weird part is, and David Moore, you can attest to this. Like, I'll go bonkers over a band, but not usually. I need to go see 3 straight concerts type bonkers, and I'll listen to Fish, and I might be the only person that's like, meh, that's okay. Like, yeah, I'll put it on, or I won't, or whatever. Or if they're in town, maybe I'll see them, maybe I won't. But to me, it's like usually people are either more what's happening on the screen here is like super fans or don't like it at all. So I'm this very odd bird there where I'm just like, yeah, I could take it or leave it.
I'm not trying to yuck anybody's yum. And once in a while, Andy will send me like a clip of, whatever, a particular good solo or something like that. I'll be like, yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
All the other stuff around it, I didn't care for, whatever. But like, again, if people like Fish, want that, God bless it. It's great.
Right.
Speaking of
it's not for
Fish,
me.
you guys did do Bittersweet Motel, correct?
That's what I was getting to here was,
Yep.
it was just the movie there. So let's bring it back to the docs. David, great idea. And David, have you seen Bittersweet Motel?
I have.
So why don't you share your thoughts on it?
It's fine. It's a bit. It's not super focused. Like it seems not quite. It's like a movie in search of a movie at the same time where it's talking about the band. Like does that? I don't know. Maybe I'm the only one. It's been a while since I've seen it, but that was at least what I remember or don't remember well about it.
It was pretty spot on. Pretty accurate there. I think that was more or less your complaint with it, right, David? Other David? Among other
I
things.
mean, it just didn't. I mean, I found the music actually to be all right. Most of the music in the show, in the movie, I thought was. I mean, I didn't like run and put it on, but I didn't dislike it. Although I think the music was chosen to be more appealing and less of the kind of like spaced out jammy stuff because they had to kind of fit it into little segments in the movie. I think the director's whole aesthetic, it just doesn't vibe for me, and his like kind of tone. Yeah, it was a little hard to get the sense of like what tone he was taking. Like, was he like kind of taking the piss, or was he sincere about? Like, it just wasn't really confident in what it was trying to communicate. There's the scene with Trey waving a gun around doesn't really hold up nowadays.
Right.
I don't know how it would have landed in 99 or whatever that came out. But yeah, just the whole thing was like, when are we going to get a movie here?
Right.
Like it just never really took off. And, I can see how it like, for Andy, I can see how this was like a dorm room classic. You know what I mean? That you would, if you're a Fish fan, you throw it on. And, in those days there was like, it's not like you could just dial up and, on Nugs and watch any show. You know what I mean? Like, so
Right,
like,
true,
if
right.
you wanted there's a lot of bands and musicians that I liked, back, whatever, in the day before the world of YouTube and all streaming and all that stuff, where like you had their one documentary or their one live
Their one concert
VHS,
film.
whatever that
Right,
came
yeah.
out, and you just watch it over and over again because that was the only content you could get.
Mm-hmm.
So I think maybe it served a role in that way, but as a non-fan, it certainly didn't convert me to be a fan. of the band or the movie or the filmmaker or anything.
Yeah. we had our guest on that episode was Rob Mitchum, who people might know. He's one of the co-hosts of 36 from the Vault. It was a podcast that did an episode by episode look at all of the releases from the Dick's Picks series on the Grateful Dead.
Okay.
With Steve Hyden, music journalist, and he's a big Fish guy. And his take was that there was sort of a confused element of Todd Phillips, because he made this movie almost concurrently with the movie Road Trip, if anybody knows.
Sure.
And he had previously made a movie for HBO about fraternities that ended up having to be pulled because he had asked many of the kids from the movie to do certain things on camera that were essentially scripted, and there was no indication of that in the movie.
Right.
So Mitchum said that there was sort of an element of Phillips being a frat boy auteur, and like some of the interviews with fans in the lot and on Shakedown Street definitely come off that way. Like,
sure,
kind of a very low level of attempt at a sophistication of of people partying, basically.
Sure.
My biggest frustration with it is just that he was on tour with them with a professional camera crew during the most important reinvention of their sound of their entire career, and that is not mentioned in that movie. That like they're in real time finding out a different way for them to be a band and changing their sound in a way that, for fans, it's considered like the golden era of the band.
Yeah,
and
it really is. It's sort of them at their peak superpowers.
And don't get me wrong, we get some good moments and even some moments of songs that I would put in that tier, but there's no discussion of like, hey, so the band started talking to each other and realizing that they could play these songs in a different way, and Trey could communicate with the band differently and play his solos differently, and that it's called the Cowfunk era, and the cameras were there for it, but it's just a more interesting movie to me. And as much as I say that as a fan, I think that would be a more interesting movie even to non-fans.
I would agree.
I wonder if there's enough footage to sort of do one of those, like, sort of how Get Back was filmed, and there's a whole the other film produced originally, that kind of thing. How much of that footage is around what it was shot on? I don't know if it was shot on film or video.
Right.
For the Fish one, I think it was shot on film.
Do you think we could get Peter Jackson to do this?
Sure. I mean, he's available, right? He's not expensive.
Hey, the last one was a success. Try this one.
Yeah, just
Disney
go from
Plus
the
would probably want to
Fish.
scoop this up too, right?
Probably, yes.
What is so I've been intrigued by this. So I've seen, I listened to a few episodes. I've looked at some of your other ones where you guys have done like your top 10, or you actually did as 2 episodes, you did your top 20 from the ones that you've already done. So I guess my question for you is, which of those is the one that you were most surprised by? Like, you had a certain expectation or thought process going into it, and it turned out to be either completely different or whatever. And then there's, of course, the inverse, which is the one you had high expectations for, and then you watch it and it was sort of like, wow, that landed like a soft sort of squish.
So that last one I have an answer for immediately. I'll jump in and then maybe give me a second to think while David talks about one that surprised me. But the one that I was hoping for that was bad is Once We Were Brothers. Once We're Brothers, about Robbie Robertson and the band.
Okay.
I love the band. I love Robbie Robertson. There is some stuff in that movie that I like a lot. Scorsese was attached to that movie as a producer as well. There's some elements where they're touring with Bob Dylan in Europe where, like, I could make a good movie out of that. No one's going to manage to screw that up. I don't think. Right. But as a whole, the movie really is so interested in inserting Robbie Robertson's version of events into the public realm, that it's borderline offensive, and at the very least, like, ham-fisted and not compelling cinema.
Self-serving,
yeah. So that's the one that I'm most disappointed by. David, what do you got?
Yeah. Well, I mean, in terms, again, one that really did not work was one of our more recent episodes about a movie called Meet Me in the Bathroom. So it's based on a famous, in this world, famous book, and it's about the New York rock revival scene of the early 2000s. So bands like The Strokes, Interpol, Yeah Yeah Yeahs, TV on the Radio, it's LCD Sound System, etc. So that's what the book is about, and what the movie is about. And Andy and I think it's safe to say we manifested this into the universe, right? Like when we started this podcast, like you can go back and check the tape in one of our early episodes. It's like what do you want to see a rock doc about?
Mhm.
And we were both like, oh yeah, that book, Meet Me in the Bathroom, is great, and like all these bands are awesome, and like it would be a great movie. And lo and behold, Hollywood, we had our finger on the pulse.
That's right.
And they're like, yeah, we're gonna do that. But
Yeah.
the twist is that it's going to be shitty. So, imagine a movie about a scene of all these like incredibly charming and good-looking and charismatic and talented young people having tons of fun in New York on top of the world, except no fun is conveyed in the movie. Like there seems not to be any fun. Like the entire thing's a drag, and like it's like how did that manage to happen? And like honestly, like almost every podcast we do, like we're praising the movie because we generally like music documentaries, and like even the ones that aren't the greatest.
You're not there to trash them by design. You're there.
Yeah, we're not here to. But like, if you really want to hear us like just kicking a movie in the dick for an hour, like just go listen to that episode because really that's what it is. I mean, it's a bummer. And again,
well, you're gonna get 2 downloads right after this. So
yeah. I mean, there's people that love that movie. And,
endorsement in the history of podcasts.
I don't know. Yeah, we don't usually go negative, but that's a rough one. But let's in terms of the opposite. Like there's a lot of podcasts that we've done that have been we've been really pleasantly surprised because we don't necessarily go in as a fan of the artist or know that much about it, whatever. Right. There's tons of examples of that, but like honestly, the episode that came out right before the Meet Me in the Bathroom one is about the documentary Garth Brooks, The Road I'm On.
Mm-hmm.
Now, neither Andy nor I went into this as like huge Garth Brooks fan. Like we knew the music or whatever, but like just not our thing. Like we just never caught on. Whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
Chris Gaines thing was weird.
Yeah, and this movie.
I still think that Chris Gaines is his best. No, I'm kidding. Best work.
Have you heard it?
I worked in a bookstore when it went on sale, and I remember having to shelve it to put it out when it was released.
All right. Nice.
I worked at a Borders when I was in college, and that was released at that point in time.
Brutal.
Garth Brooks is the most interesting protagonist or maybe antagonist of a film that I've seen in a long time.
Awesome.
He is an absolutely fascinating character in ways that I could never have possibly expected. And after we watched the movie, like I've been going around telling people about this movie and about how Garth Brooks comes off in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And they do not believe me because there's no way that any person actually acts like that and would sign off on being portrayed that way in a movie that he totally had control over. And it is a phenomenal experience to watch it. And even just talking about it was a blast. I don't know, Andy. You can jump in on this one.
Yeah, I agree on Garth Brooks. The other one I would say that surprised me was We Are Twisted Sister.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Have you guys seen that movie?
I have not, but Dee Snider can be, and JJ French. They're the two that they'll yak it up for hours.
JJ French is like as smart a person as there is.
He's a lawyer and like the person that basically kept the business of the band alive.
Yeah, totally. And so that was when we have guests, we ask them to sort of recommend a movie. And so Jake Longstreth, who people might know, he's co-host on Time Crisis, the Apple show with Ezra Koenig from Vampire Weekend. And he came on, and that was his selection. He's a painter. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. Jake Longstreth, like classic rock head, sophisticated painter is picking We Are Twisted Sister. And then we sat down with it, and it's just a fascinating movie. It's a really interesting movie, and it has the novel premise that the entire movie, every minute, takes place up until they get famous. The moment that they get a record contract and become famous, the movie ends. And it's just about them slogging along.
Sure.
I shouldn't even say slogging along, honestly. It's more interesting than that. They're playing to like 5,000 people a night, 3 or 4 nights a week, only in like the tri-state area, basically, with the entire rest of the music industry shrugging their shoulders and saying like, well, that doesn't sound like anything we could manage to make money off of. So it's like this weird indie world of music that that just even in the largesse of the music industry of that time, no one wanted to be a part of except for like scumbag Long Island like rock club promoters, you know, like
Proto mulleted.
Yeah,
That's amazing. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, there almost is like, no disrespect to the Twisted Sister fans out there, but I would say from my perspective, there's almost no music documentary where the delta between the quality of the music and the quality of the film is so high. Like it is, like I'm not a fan of Twisted Sister's music, not interested at all, not for me. But the movie, like, they could make 10 more documentaries about them, and I would like, where do I walk? Like, just strap me to the seat, like Alex from Clockwork Orange. Like,
right? Yeah, you need this is
like,
Twisted
totally
Sister
in.
2 Electric Boogaloo is what you need.
Just
Yeah.
everything, anything. Like, I found like an hour-long interview with Jay French on YouTube after we talked about the movie, and I was like, oh my! And it is so good. This hour-long interview with him is just as good as the movie because it's really just him, the raw article. Like it's so like, I don't know, give this guy a podcast, whatever. It's
Right.
Yeah.
all, and you know, they're all just fascinating in their own way. And it's a movie that focuses in to some extent on the fans, and you know, somebody who was a diehard fan of Twisted Sister and made their whole life about them in like 1977. That's just an interesting person. You know what I mean? Like that, like so many music documentaries really do not focus on the fans. There's some notable exceptions, but there should be more that do, because people that are hardcore music fans, especially like, you know, from a weird niche or something that's like a little off the beaten path, are just almost bound to be interesting people, and the choices they make are fascinating. So that, you know, again, that was a part of Meet Me in the Bathroom. It was like they didn't get at all into like who are the people who are going to these shows and like doing coke with the guys from the Strokes in the bathroom, like, you know, in 2000 before they blew up. Like those people must have interesting stories and lives too, and totally ignored. So yeah, back to that one. Rough.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. So we have a recommendation. You mentioned about asking it. So last week we interviewed Quinn Sullivan. We mentioned he's actually playing at the Peach Festival this year. He was part of, it was a bigger feature about Buddy Guy, but in a documentary called The Torch. And so I had mentioned it before we came on here, but it was one of those ones where I was actually on a plane, and I always go to the music documentary section, kind of like what we were talking about before. It's like, what a unique opportunity. I'm on a 6-hour flight, and I got nothing better to do, so let's throw on one.
You're
of
one
these.
of our guys. You're one of our guys.
So I threw on this one. First, I didn't even know that. I don't think the title does it justice. It was like The Torch. What is this about? Like, you know, it was like a thousand
singers?
things.
Like,
right.
I mean, it's like that
yeah,
kind
I was
of thing.
thinking about all sort of Torch song trilogy. I don't know, like
Right.
all this different stuff. And I opened it up, I'm like, Buddy Guy. That didn't strike me as where this was going to go. I was like kind of a little bit more intrigued as a result. Put it on. Fascinating. Like just his whole story, growing up in Louisiana, child of parents sharecroppers, kind of walks his way to Chicago, meets Muddy Waters, and gets basically taken under his wing. And it's this amazing story about not only his life, but kind of the legacy of blues music, and then how he wants to hand that off and not let it die. And so one of the major features is this kid. He's 24 now, but in the documentary, he's primarily, I say primarily because it does span a couple years, but he's like in the 15 to 17-year-old range.
Oh, wow.
But it talks about how great a prodigy he was even at 3, 4, 5 years old. So it dove a little bit into his story, mostly about Buddy Guy's story, and then also about blues just in the United States, in America. And so we were lucky enough, we reached out to Quinn Sullivan. He agreed to come on the show, and last week we had him on. And he's not only is he supremely talented, but what total level-headed, humble dude who's amazingly talented and has met, you know, titans of the guitar world. So that's just pretty amazing too. So I would highly recommend that documentary. And, you know, if you ever wanted to chat about it, I would love to do that. So.
Yeah, that's a great idea. That's
Yeah.
a great idea. I like I mean, we David and I are we're into like categorizing types of documentary, and the documentary that has that sort of like premise there, like okay, it's about Buddy Guy and it's about Quinn Snyder, but it's also about the path of blues music. that can go really wrong if you don't in execution.
Correct.
But when it works, it's really good. I mean, one
Yeah.
I would say that didn't work is like I don't know. Have you guys seen that movie Sound City about the
that's the Dave Grohl one.
the Dave Grohl, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like I could see that pitch being picked up. I was like, okay, interesting. Like a studio. We'll go through all the musicians that came through and
all these great musicians, all these hit records that were made there. That's interesting.
There's going to be endless stories. We're going to be able to,
right.
This will be the first time somebody actually needed to sit in front of a soundboard to tell a story during a movie, and then that movie's just not fun to watch. Like there's nothing interesting about that movie.
Yeah, It Might Get Loud is kind of similar.
I Might Get Loud isn't that one's like almost the other end where it's like you only got half of the way to building a premise in. Like
I was kind of disappointed with that movie as a whole.
That's another one we really roasted, which is pretty. Again, it's pretty rare. Most of the time we're praising, but yeah, it is kind of fun.
Well, you figure with those 3 guitarists, you're like, wow, this is going to be interesting stories. We're going to see interesting,
you would think
licks.
Right?
You're going to have inside story stuff, but instead it sort of falls into 3 dudes standing around.
Yeah, it seems like the producers didn't get past when we get these 3 guys together.
Yeah,
the rest will
Magic
take care
will
of itself. And it
Roll
just
the
like
cameras.
it didn't happen, and they're all looking at each other and like, I don't know. I guess just keep filming.
Yeah,
they'll have to do something eventually.
Like a real awkward work.
It's like that
event,
meme where like they got the stick and it's poking. It's like, do something.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, at the end, the big set piece, the culmination of that film, is a rendition of the 3 of them together playing The Weight, which is not
right.
I love that song. It's not a great guitar song by anyone's definition. There's no place for any of the 3 of them to do anything, and neither of the 3 of them are like really great singers.
No.
So, it seems really like it was the song that all 3 of them knew, right? Then that they could play.
Yeah, they were just like, okay, only 2 out of the 3 of you know this.
Yeah.
Okay, how about this one now? And yep, we got a winner.
Yeah.
Okay, book it, put it in the can, and then.
So I don't know, David. How many times do you think The Weight has made an appearance on the 50-some episodes we've done?
It might be the song that shows up the most. I don't know. There's a lot of
74. Somehow it's shown up more times
it
than
keeps
episodes.
popping up, and it's a great song. But yeah, we don't unlike fish.net or whatever, we don't have any statistics.
There's no mathematics around.
No
Not
mathematics. Yeah. Some people just keep popping up in these documentaries, and some songs do, some artists like, hey, and there's Mavis Staples again. But we haven't gone to the trouble to tabulate these things. It's above our station.
Yeah.
Well, what can we help promote for you? Like as far as either upcoming episodes or places where you would like to direct people to catch your content?
I think if I'm doing the math right, when this episode of ours is live, an episode of ours on the Rock Docs podcast feed about the movie Crossfire Hurricane comes out, which is about the Rolling Stones. So that's a popular band that people may have heard of.
Your new favorite band, the Rolling Stones.
That's right. Yeah, they're on the show later this year.
This guy, you may have heard of him, Elton John. He's done a few things.
Exactly. So that's out new. That's new. But yeah, I mean, you can find Rock Docs wherever you find podcasts. In the audio world. And also on Treble Media, which I think you mentioned at the top, but yeah, they're a music journalism site. They've got a Patreon and all kinds of other stuff. They support their writers and things like that, so we want to support them. And that's kind of where you'd find us, at Rock Docs Pod on Twitter. And I don't know, like we like it when people get in there and suggest, hey, have you talked about this documentary? Or here's one that I liked, or they comment about an episode of ours that they listened to and thought we were being idiots. I don't know, whatever. Any of that stuff is fun.
Yeah,
we're just here to have fun.
You've done episodes where you've talked about listener emails and questions and stuff, so people should feel free to chime in, ask questions, make recommendations and such, and you guys are great about that.
We are very great about it. So
Right. Well, Andy and David, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It was great to have you guys on.
Thank you, guys. It's a good time.
Good times.
David?
Philip.
I am so excited. I have to check out. Let's see. I have to check out their episode about Meet Me in the Bathroom.
The We Are Twisted Sister
Twisted Sister for sure. And what was that other one that they talked about that was great?
What was the other one they talked about that was great?
No, though at the end there they made one more recommendation that I can't forget because it was another documentary that they had talked about was a surprise that was so good.
Oh, the Garth Brooks one.
Garth Brooks, yes.
Yeah.
I can't wait because I mean that's such a great way to set that one up because talking about how he was in control and they can't believe that he allowed it to happen that way. I can't wait to see where that goes.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? I guess when you have like unlimited amount of money to do anything you want, you can feel invulnerable to anything you put out there.
Yeah, or unlimited amount of deludedness.
Well, that happens with the money.
All right, Phil, let's say goodbye to everybody.
Episode of your next favorite band, or in this case, your next favorite music podcast. We would like to sincerely thank Andy and David from the Rock Docs podcast, and really loved having them share their stories and their experiences and their top recommendations for which documentaries to check out and which episodes of theirs to kind of focus in on, and then you're going to want to keep diving in like I did. Like once you listen to one, you're going to want to check out a bunch of others and have it inspire you to check out some of the movies they talk about. There'll be links in the show notes to those sites and the socials, as well as we'll link to some of the specific movies, just so that you have quick access to all of that. As always, our hope here is to bring you your next favorite band. If you tuned in tonight because you already knew of David and Andy's Rock Docs pod, thank you so much for tuning in. We simply ask that you might consider liking, subscribing, following us, because we've got a lot of great stuff coming up. And maybe just like we were talking about here, also checking out some of the prior content. Hopefully you can check out this coming weekend. We have our No Planet B Jamboree, which will be a very, very cool day. And if it's already past that date, definitely go check it out. And we hope to see you soon. It's all over now.